The last time a preseason favorite won the Heisman Trophy was back in 2014 when Marcus Mariota opened at plus 425 odds and finished that year with over 5,200 total yards and 57 touchdowns. But only two of the past five winners were ranked in the top five preseason favorites to win, and the other three were barely even considered dark horses. Since 2015, Ohio State's had three preseason favorites, but none finished higher than third place after it was all said and done, and the Big Ten hasn't seen a player bring home the trophy since Troy Smith won it in 2006. Last year's winner is looking to go back to back, and with two other Pac 12 QBs at the top of the odds list, that Big Ten drought might continue. But with the transfer portal and so many coaching changes making every season so much different from the last, it's getting harder to predict a winner before conference play starts, and betting on a single player is like playing roulette. So today, we're looking at the Big Ten's Longshots, the Contenders, and the favorites to see who's got a legit chance to win. And we'll look at the biggest preseason names that ended up being busts. But what's up, guys? I'm Connor Hayden, and this is Corn Crazed. If you're a fan of Nebraska or the Big Ten, hit the subscribe button below so you don't miss any of the videos I drop. And if you think the Big Ten can end its Heisman drought this year, hit the like button now and help us get to 1,000. But now, let's get into it.
Thompson winds up, goes deep, got a man, touchdown!
Before we look at some of the recent winners and break down who's got the best chance to win in 2023, let's go back and look at a few of the biggest preseason favorites who underperformed and didn't quite live up to expectations. In 2018, after transferring from Ole Miss to Michigan, Shea Patterson was sixth in the preseason odds, but he failed to live up to the five-star hype, and their total offense ended up ranking outside the top 100. He started all 13 games, but after he failed to reach 3,000 yards passing, fans were questioning whether or not he was even good enough to be considered a top 25 quarterback that season. Michigan upgraded at OC the very next year, but by the end of 2019, it was clear that Shea was the problem. Coming off an elite finish to his freshman year, Adrian Martinez was given plus 1,200 odds and ranked third behind Tua and Trevor Lawrence in August of 2019. A lot of people thought it was a reach, but Scott Frost had worked magic with Mariota and Mackenzie Milton before, so Nebraska fans, myself included, felt great about Martinez in year two. Unfortunately, he dealt with some injuries and missed a couple games, but regardless, he played with less confidence and he looked slower than he did in year one, and both he and Nebraska looked terrible in what was expected to be an 8-win season. Spencer Rattler wasn't in the Big Ten, but he was a huge favorite at plus 550, which made sense since OU had won two of the last four and Jalen Hurts finished second in 2019. After starting 6 games in 2021, Lincoln Riley benched him for another future Heisman winner in Caleb Williams, and Spencer ultimately decided it was time to look for a better opportunity. He's listed at plus 6,500 as South Carolina's starting quarterback this year, but being such a highly rated recruit with so much hype just 2 years ago, anything less than an invite to the ceremony will mean that he's going down as a big-time Heisman bust. I went through the latest odds that FanDuel has listed, and I put the top 12 players in the Big Ten into 3 categories: long shots, contenders, and favorites. But to get a better idea of how likely it is that somebody from a specific category wins, first we got to look at the recent Heisman history. I want to know what positions are most likely to win, how good was their team's record, and what were their odds before the season started. The first point to note is that running backs are losing value in the modern offense. Dual threat QBs and pass-heavy attacks are giving quarterbacks an extra 1,000-ish yards that would normally be distributed among the running backs. Kyler Murray ran for 1,000 yards in 2018, and the last 3 QBs to win it averaged 36 pass attempts per game. There's a reason that the position with the highest odds outside of a QB this year is receiver. The next point to note is that you've got to play on a team that wins games. USC lost 3 games last year with Caleb Williams, but the only other player that lost that many in the past 10 seasons was Lamar Jackson, who played on a 9-4 Louisville team in 2016. You don't have to make a New Year's Six Bowl to win the Heisman, but if you have a Heisman winner on your team, you're probably going to a New Year's Six game. Last, let's look at some of the preseason odds for some of the past winners. Caleb Williams and Bryce Young were both preseason top three, but what about the guys who were bigger underdogs? Kyler Murray hadn't started a game yet, but he was still listed at plus 2,000 before the season, meaning if you bet $100 on him to win, you'd win 2,000. Joe Burrow had already won a New Year's Six bowl game, but he was still listed with low odds at plus 6,500 before he took off and had one of the best Heisman seasons ever. And remember Devontae Smith? He had over 1,200 yards receiving in 2019, and that still wasn't enough to get him Heisman odds before the year started. If he was listed back then, it would have been something insane like plus 20,000. I love the underdog stories that remind us anything can happen. So just remember, Lamar Jackson was listed at plus 11,000 the year that he won, and his team barely finished that season in the top 25. Now that we know what it takes to win the Heisman in 2023, we're going to look at 12 players in the Big Ten with the best odds given by FanDuel. I broke them up into 3 categories based on where they ranked. So let's start off with the Longshots. Braylon Allen, Hudson Card, Tanner Mordecai, and Taven Jackson all fit in this category. The one name that stands out here is Braylon Allen because he's a bit more proven than the others. His odds are slightly better at plus 8,000, but the problem is, and the reason his odds are so low, is that he's a running back on a Wisconsin team that just brought in an OC who's committed to throwing the ball. Luke Fickell isn't going to waste the talent he's got in the backfield, but to win the Heisman, he'd need to get a lot more touches than I expect him to in a pass-heavy scheme. Now his QB Tanner Mordecai is a more intriguing long shot at plus 12,000. Phil Longo's the new OC at Wisconsin, and he just got done working with Drake May, who he helped develop into a first-round talent and a 4,300-yard passer. Mordecai's coming off back-to-back 3,500-yard seasons at SMU, but how much better can he be with more weapons around him in Madison? We know you gotta win 9 games to be considered, and Luke Fickell's projected to win 8 or 9 in his first year, so if Mordecai can hit 4,000 yards passing in an air raid offense, then these plus 12,000 odds are gonna look ridiculous. Hudson Card takes over at Purdue after a decent run at Texas, but he's at Purdue. They're a fringe bowl team in their first year with a new coach, and the new offensive coordinator, Graham Harrell, hasn't had great QB play in a long time. I'm just not ready to buy into the idea that Card was good at Texas, but that he can be better against stronger defenses in the Big Ten with less offensive weapons around him. And last on the long shots list is Taven Jackson, who I'm shocked is getting this much respect. He's a former 4-star recruit who was at Tennessee for his freshman year, but decided to go back home since they brought in a 5-star recruit who's younger than him. But Indiana hasn't been a school where you would go to revive your career. Connor Bazelak was good at Missouri, but after transferring to IU last year, he actually got worse. They're projected to win 4 games, the offense doesn't have any weapons, and the only reason I think his odds are as good as Mordecai is because he's by far the best player on their team. Jackson's Heisman hopes are non-existent, but it would be great if he could lead Indiana back to making bowl games. The next group is the Contenders, all guys who've proven they can put up big numbers and make a big impact on their teams. We'll start with Ohio State running back Travion Henderson, who missed a few games last season with an injury. He's projected to be a top 10 draft eligible back in 2024, and he's got the highest ceiling of any running back at Ohio State since he proved he can be a 1,000-yard rusher as a true freshman. He's plenty talented, but when you have one of the best receiving corps in the country, my guess is that pass game is going to be the emphasis, just like it was with CJ Stroud, and Henderson won't get enough carries to be the star he'd need to be if he wanted an invite to New York. The other running back in this group's got the exact same odds, but Penn State doesn't have the passing game or the receivers that Ohio State does, so I think Nick Singleton might actually have a bit more hope. He took off last season, finishing with over 1,000 yards and 13 touchdowns, and he earned Big Ten Freshman of the Year. Since Penn State's breaking in a new QB in Drew Waller and James Franklin's consistently shown he's committed to running the ball, I've got to assume Singleton will finish as a top 3 back in the Big Ten and one of the best in the country. Surprisingly, Jeff Sims has the 4th highest Heisman odds for any QB in the Big Ten. I say surprisingly because 1, we don't really know what the offense will look like yet, and 2, he's never thrown for over 2,000 yards in the season. He's getting a huge boost because of his skill set and the assumption that Matt Rule is going to make the QB run a big part of the playbook. But if he wants any chance to earn the respect that he wasn't able to in the ACC, Jeff needs to lead Nebraska to a bowl game and win a game over a top 25 team. The harsh reality is, if the O-line isn't significantly better than it was for Adrian Martinez or Casey Thompson, Sims is going to be in for a long, long season. And last, we've got the favorites. Any one of these five could end up in New York and nobody will be surprised. First, we got Blake Corum, whose biggest competition is going to be in his own room. Donovan Edwards looked fantastic when he took over as the feature back for the last few games of the season, and there's no reason to bang Corum up when they can just divide the carries evenly to keep both guys healthy for the entire year. He's probably the best back in the country over Quinshawn Judkins or Will Shipley, but Edwards is too good to keep off the field, and that might ding his chances. The good news for Michigan fans is that if Corum doesn't make it, they'll still have a second chance with J.J. McCarthy. In his first year as the starter, he threw for 2,700 yards and had a 22-5 TD to interception ratio. It's still a run-first offense, but now that McCarthy's proven he can be effective with the deep ball, I wouldn't be surprised to see Michigan open the offense up to keep defenses honest. Marvin Harrison has the best odds for any receiver, and it's not even close. He had over 1,200 yards receiving with 14 TDs in his first year as a starter. Ohio State's always a threat to make the playoff, and they love throwing the ball. The problem is, we don't know how good his new quarterback's going to be, and to win the Heisman as a receiver, your stats got to be off the charts. When Devontae Smith won it back in 2020, he had 40 more catches and 600 more yards than Harrison did in 2022, and that was with a proven QB. Kyle McCord's only thrown 58 passes so far in his career, so there's still some unknown with his game, but the advantage he has is getting to play behind an elite O-line and throw into two of the best receivers in the country. Plus 2,000 odds almost means we can expect him to be the best QB in the Big Ten, and as long as Ohio State gets back to the playoffs, an invite to New York's going to be inevitable. Penn State did okay with Sean Clifford, but their offense is looking to turn the corner and compete for a playoff spot with Drew Waller. He threw for 344 yards and 4 TDs last year as a true freshman, but he was the number one QB in his entire class, so the expectations in year one as the starter are going to be through the roof. Even though they added a top 10 receiver from the portal, Penn State lost their two best receivers, so there might be a drop-off early on, and the run game could end up being the focus. I still like Waller to develop into an elite QB, I just don't know if that's going to happen right away. I'd probably go with McCarthy as my favorite, Singleton as my contender, and Mordecai as my long shot. But as we've seen in the past, literally anything can happen and any player can win it. But I want to know what you think, so let me know in the comments below. Do you think Jeff Sims has it in him to guide Nebraska to a 9-win year and play like one of the best QBs in the country? Is Blake Corum going to make a big comeback and finish as the best running back in college football this season? And who do you think's in position for a better season, Drew Waller or Kyle McCord? That Ohio State-Penn State matchup is going to have a lot on the line, and with multiple Heisman contenders playing in that one, it's going to be one of the most exciting games of the entire season. But that's all I got for today, so until next time, thank you for being here, and I'll see you in the next one. Go Big Red.